Well, I'll go ahead and pray, and then whoever's going to come. Lord, please bless this time. Lord, I really want it to be a blessing. We don't just need another message, but we need you to come and speak to our hearts from the Bible about marriage. Please help us apply these things. Lord, we know that not everybody needs every verse, but there just might be an idea that we can grab onto and help us. I know that even just studying for this conference has helped me. And so I know it's got to be a blessing to everybody else. So I pray you'd bless this time. In Jesus' name, amen. So you might hear me call Brother Spurgeon Mr. Wonderful. Because he is. He's Mr. Wonderful to me. But the way that came about was after I got married to Brother Spurgeon, I was always Mrs. Honstein for years and years and years. So then when I got married to Brother Spurgeon, nobody knew what to call me. So all the kids would be calling me Mrs. Honstein all the time because I'd been their Sunday school teacher and everything like that. And so then one time somebody said, Mrs. Honstein, and they said, no, Mrs. Spurgeon. And then they said, well, I don't know what to call you anymore. And Brother Spurgeon said, just call her Mrs. Wonderful. So after that, he started calling me Mrs. Wonderful all the time, all over America. So now when he gets up to sing, he'll say, come on, Mrs. Wonderful. And then if he doesn't, somebody will say, he didn't call her Mrs. Wonderful. There's something wrong. I mean, loudly in the church. They'll say, he didn't call her Mrs. Wonderful. But it was funny because he would come into the kitchen when you're getting ready for camp meeting or something. He'd say, Mrs. Wonderful. And all of the ladies would go, here we are. We're Mrs. Wonderful. You know, I was reading in my personal Bible reading this morning in Psalm 61. This was pretty interesting. It says, so will I sing praises unto thy name forever, that I may daily perform my vows. How about that for marriage? Daily performing what did you vow when you got married? To love, right? Honor, cherish, whatever. Hopefully you didn't get some of those neo-evangelical vows that don't say anything. But that's what the Lord wants for us. And we also want to be, in Proverbs 31, it says, her husband riseth up and praiseth her. And I thought, boy, that's what I want to be. I want to be that person that my husband could say something nice about instead of rottenness in his bones. I've probably been a bunch of each one. So where I'd like to start today is go to Isaiah 62:5. And if you write down every verse that we talk about, I counted like over 20 verses in each message. Oh, yeah. So they might be something you might want to refer back to later in time. But first of all, I'm just going to remind you about Nehemiah 8:10, where it says, the joy of the Lord is our strength. Okay, so then let's go to Isaiah 62:5. And it says, as a bridegroom rejoiceth over the bride, so shall thy God rejoice over thee. So, do you have a joyful marriage or not? A marriage without joy is a weak marriage because the Bible says the joy of the Lord is our strength. So if we don't have joy in our marriage, then our marriages are going to be weak. And here it says, as a bridegroom rejoice. So in the beginning, right, the bridegroom at the wedding, he's rejoicing over his bride. And it says, because of that happiness, thy God rejoices over you. Isn't that a blessing? He's right there in on this joyful marriage. And then your joy should continue daily. I mean, it doesn't always, guys. You know, we talked about this last night. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's arrived. We all have our ups and downs. But this is the goal. Okay, we got to have a good goal or we're just going to wallow. Okay, so let's go to Ecclesiastes 9:9. it says in Ecclesiastes 9:9, and this is an imperative sentence. It has an implied you, right? Because it starts out with the verb. Live joyfully with the wife whom thou lovest all the days of the life of thy vanity. It's a present tense. So we talked about it being at the beginning of our marriages, but it says every day, live joyfully. So the joy is supposed to be through all the days. Look at that. Why don't you underline that? All the days. So we want to think about each day trying to find the joy that's in the situation. And let me tell you, I am trying to find my phone so I have the right time. I just have to use my first husband as an example, okay? And try to get this in your brain when you are in the glumpty-dumpties. So my husband was shot in Vietnam in the spine. He came home in a wheelchair at the age of 22, paralyzed from the waist down. Okay, so he's cute, he's handsome, he's Mr. Popular at school, and then he comes home disabled. And he knows what everybody thinks about disabled people. People think you can't speak, people think you're retarded because you're in a wheelchair. But he was in a wheelchair. He could not move his toe. So we got saved about 2 years after we got married. And he would look at that wheelchair. Hey, it's a very sobering thing to look across in your bedroom and see a wheelchair in the corner. The kind that people have to stay in all the time, not just these ones at the rest home. So he would be there and he'd say, "This is the day that the Lord hath made. I will rejoice and be glad in it." And if a young 20-something can get to that point, then whatever situation that we find ourselves in, we can keep that as a convicting reminder that we can get on top of some of our difficult situations. So let's go to Proverbs 5:18. Proverbs 5, we're talking about how to have a joyful marriage. It says in Proverbs 18, "Let thy fountain be blessed, and rejoice with the wife of thy youth." And you know what I think of that when I read that? I think our joy in marriage keeps us young. It keeps us looking back to that time when we were courting and we fell in love with each other. It's a very special time. And I think joy in marriage keeps you feeling young. So the first point I'd like to make today is for us to critique ourselves. Now we can say, well, it's my husband's problem. Yeah, there's a lot that's probably true about that. But all we can change is ourselves. I'm not here to talk about them. I'm here to talk about us. And we need to critique ourselves and identify, just like Sherlock Holmes was going around, identify the killjoys. Kill joy, right? You're killing the joy. The killjoys in your marriage. What do we do on a daily basis that just brings the wrong spirit into the room? Okay? So how about, I got a list here. Remember, we're two separate creations. Adam was created, and the woman was created separately. So we're not even made exactly the same, exactly, right? I mean, that's what we see every day. So the difference is, number one, sometimes a killjoy is just not understanding the difference between men and women. And that's one of the biggest lessons, as I told you, that I've learned, is that men are totally different than we are. And if you think he's going to ever meet your emotional needs, you are very wrong. You are very wrong. He cannot. He is a different creation, and there is a great gulf fixed between men and women. And the sooner you enjoy the difference instead of holding their feet to the fire and making them feel bad that they cannot, right, understand, we cannot understand them, then you'll be happier in your marriage. You'll have a more joyful marriage when you get to that point. Let's go to Genesis 1:18. It says in Genesis 1:18, it is not good for man to be alone. It's not good for a man to be alone. I will make and help meet for him. And I know you guys know this already, but it's not help. The word isn't help meet. It's a help meet for him. It's God made us to fit together with him, as we're supposed to meet his needs. We're a help that's appropriate for him, that fills in the gaps for him. So you need to embrace the difference and enjoy how he is so different, and that it's normal. We're not supposed to think the same thoughts. We're supposed to balance each other out and complement each other. And the second one, another killjoy could be not understanding the differences between people because of upbringing. Because of upbringing. My first husband was from a family of yellers. They yelled everything. Well, he started yelling, I thought we were going to get a divorce. Because my parents never once fought in front of us. Not one time. Not even an ugly look. Like, you know, one of those. Nothing. I mean, so I wasn't prepared for the world of argument when I got married. And I just thought, oh, and I really did. I thought our marriage was over. But he was from that kind of family. So it's good that I got on board and started to understand it. So not understanding how they've been brought up, because each home is unique. Number 3, not understanding the difference because of not just men and women, but just genetics. You guys that have a sibling, and you were raised together, do you ever, something happens in the room and you look at each other and you know what they're thinking. But at the same time, with the same group of sisters, something can happen and we don't agree on it. We wouldn't agree on it at all. So, I mean, there's some times where we totally would get it, and there's sometimes we think, why'd she do it that way? Kind of thing. So there are differences even within there. How about this one? Not understanding what your spouse's life experience has been. So I had a brother that was a bully, and I love him very much. He got saved, and we all love each other now. But let me tell you, it was on for years. It was a battle. And that, I can see that affects my relationship with my husband. Because he starts coming on strong about something, and I'm going, what a bully. You know, because that's it, and I can't help it. It just jumps up out of nowhere that it's there. So our life experiences, or how about, so Mike was very private. Like when he died, I didn't even open his glove compartment for like a month, because his glove compartment was private. His wallet was private. His part of the room over there, he had I call it the corner of no return. I couldn't even dust it because he didn't want anything touched or moved, you know. So but after his mom passed away, I was reading her diaries, and she was very nosy and in his business, and that was his way of protecting himself, because his mom had just been in his business his whole life and kind of trying to micromanage him. I didn't get that until many, many years, but you don't know. So these are things that can kill the joy, because you just don't understand. Or that difference, how about not accepting your role as a wife? Not really thinking that the scriptures apply to you, because God gave us distinct roles. In Genesis 1:16, it says, thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. That is a crazy concept if you're not getting it out of the Bible. It sounds really, you know, in this day of feminism. But it says, your desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. Man, that's a tough one. And over there it says, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. These are important distinctions, and God has given us these roles. And how about comparisons? Comparing your husband to others. Kind of like we talked about my friend that thought that her husband should be just like the guy across the church. Chester the molester, it turned out to be. But your discontentment in your situation can be very dangerous. Just think about Eve. She was discontent, right? She was discontent. She was not satisfied with what God had given her. She wanted more. She wanted to be as intelligent, right, as the gods. Fellowshipping with the Lord in the cool of the evening wasn't enough. Her role as helpmeet wasn't enough. She knew that eating that fruit was going to cause a breach between her and God, and she did it anyway. She knew it. She was not ignorant. And she knew that the tree had something to do with death, and she did it anyway. So being discontent, see the downward progression? You start here with discontentment, then you're here, and then you're here, and then you're doing things you don't think you'd ever do before. So godliness with contentment is great gain. 1 Timothy 6. How about just plain old-fashioned selfishness? That could be a killjoy in your marriage. Ask the Lord, is there something here for me? How about stagnation? Same old, same old. Okay, go to 2 Peter 1, verse 5. It says to add to your faith, right? This is the add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance. Okay, so in the same way that in our Christian life we're supposed to be adding and growing and being better along these steps that God has given us, the same thing should be about your marriage. That you should be wanting to improve your marriage and not let it just be stagnating. You know what happens with stagnant water, right? Germs and flies and mosquitoes and all those kind of things. So we want to think about, is it just, I'm just lazy. I'm just lazy in my marriage. We don't want that. That could be a killjoy. Or how about time wasted on, the old thief in the living room stuff, the TV, the internet, the phone conversations. I remember telling Mrs. Estep I didn't have time for sitting with Miss Gloria. I didn't have time. She said, well, you really have the time to do what you want, don't you? You can be where you want to be when you really want to be there. Most of the time, I know there's exceptions, but anyway, time wasted or having an independent spirit and wanting to maintain your separateness. And how about having a leave and cleave problem? You're supposed to leave you're supposed to leave your family and cleave to your husband. And cleave means to adhere, like glue, join, and stick to. It's part of becoming one flesh. It says, right? The two shall be one flesh. But you want your own separate self. But it says one flesh. So we want in our marriages to see what it is that will glue us together and keep us glued together. And jealousy. But I will go back. There is a danger of sharing marital details with your family. I don't care if they are your best friends. They will never forget it if you say something bad. They will never forget. I hold grudges for a long time. You do something to my daughter, I'm gonna, yeah, I gotta like work at getting over it. But you don't want to overshare things that should just be between you and your husband. And another killjoy could be thinking about past relationships and letting those past relationships flavor the relationship you have with your husband. So you got to work at getting that out of your marriage. Or past grievances where you haven't really forgiven them for something. And that grudge just keeps needling you all the time. How about more emphasis on your friendships with your girlfriends than your husband, right? That could be a killjoy. Money, spending differences. How about nagging? I know this sounds like a lot, but I mean, there might be one per person here. Nagging and complaining. So this, for example, this one young lady had beautiful hair, and her husband loved her hair. And she kept saying, I want to cut my hair. I just want to cut my hair. For like years, she needled him about that she wanted to have a different hairstyle. And he just loved her hair the way it was. So he finally says, okay, go ahead and cut your hair. So she comes home with her new hairstyle, and he just, like, she said he just kept looking. Like, oops. But you don't want to just wear them away till you get what you want, especially if you want them to think you're pretty. I was with somebody, and they were real manipulative of their husband, and they answered the phone. They said, he called her, and I'm standing there, and she goes, hello? And so this is a Christian girl. I said, after they hung up, I said, why did you answer the phone like that? And she said, well, if I don't answer the phone like that, he'll go and do errands and things after work and not come right home. So, yeah. I would be glad for a few extra minutes to get dinner on the table, have everything look like I really was prepared. Yeah. Sometimes one spouse will feel shortchanged that they don't have enough free time with each other. And like I told you last night, not getting the point about the shirts for 5 years, that he wanted all the shirts ironed at one time. Took me 5 years. I think I'm a slow learner. But, and then not keeping short accounts. That can be a killjoy in our marriages, right? When we kind of hold on to things and we don't get things out that really are damaging and hurting our marriages. How about holding his feet to the fire on everything and acting like you're so perfect and anything he does could be a problem? Just be gracious, and if you feel he has a character flaw, then just pray about it. And it's really cool when God takes care of it instead of your interference. How about letting God work in your husband's life? Maybe he's praying, isn't it funny? Maybe he's praying about something that you have a problem with and you're not seeing. And oh Lord, help her out, right? And how about letting him feel that you're disappointed with him as a husband? That could be a killjoy in your marriage as well. And sometimes when we first get married, we fabricated a dream man that doesn't really exist. And how can a man possibly measure up to a make-believe person? So this could be disappointing and a problem in your relationship as well. So this disappointment could be the problem for lots of different things, but you think he's not the man you thought he was, but he is the man you married, and you're going to have to come to grips with that. You're not perfect, and he is not perfect, of course. And wouldn't it be great if your husband could be loved for who he really is, instead of something you've put so far up that he can't ever reach that goal? And so what we need to do is consider that there may be a way you are killing joy in your relationship that you absolutely do not know. And part of the spiritual maturity is to take the blame when you are at fault. So let's go to Psalm 19:12 and just consider for a minute that there's something that you're doing that's killing the joy in your marriage. In Psalm 19:12, it says, "Who can understand his errors? Cleanse thou me from secret faults." And let's go to Numbers 15:27.
What was that verse?
Numbers 15:27.
Okay.
Numbers, let me go there. Numbers 15. And the only thing I wanted to bring out here is that it says, if any soul sin through ignorance. Okay, there could be something we're doing that we don't understand, is what I'm trying to say. Go to Job 34:32. And this is where we need to get and ask the Lord. To admit that you're the problem sometimes could be a real life-changing thing in your marriage. The guy can't be wrong every time, you know. So Job 34:32 says, that which I see not, that which I don't know about, that which I see not, teach thou me. If I have done iniquity, I will do no more. Just let me know what it is, Lord, so I can get it straightened out. I had a young lady tell me, my guilt, this is a quote from her, my guilt in my marriage was not as obvious as my husband's guilt, but it was just as destructive to our relationship. And sometimes I've gotten alone with the Lord, and I mean, if there's tension in the air and I can't quite understand what's going on, I have gotten with the Lord and asked Him to show me through the Bible or a counselor or something, what is it? What is it? What have I neglected? What have I, to show me, because I do have the Holy Spirit within me, right? And so we could ask the Lord to show us something and possibly have to admit that we are the problem. So you want to consider there may be a way, you want to critique yourself, consider you are the problem, confess the way that you maybe know that you've participated in killing the joy of your marriage. Remember that song, Nothing Between My Soul and the Savior? It's kind of an older song. But how about that same feeling towards our husbands? Nothing between my heart and my husband. A wrong kind of confession and talking to your husband would be, I'm sorry I get hurt when you yell at me. Okay, that's kind of a backdoor confession, but so confess what you did. Confess your sin. Confess the thing that you both know is hurting your marriage. And use wisdom. There are things you don't confess to your husband. You don't say to your husband, I'm sorry I lusted after so-and-so. I mean, he will never forget. So just keep it to yourself. If you did, don't. If you felt attracted, don't bring it up. Just ask God to forgive you for being a stinker. And don't do that to your husband and put that in his brain. Just use discernment. Remember discretion, discernment. There are things, and then there are things that are just going to be better for you to not confess, but just to change. Just change it. And then he might say, oh, you know, whatever the problem is. Oh, and I don't even want to bring one up because we each have a different one. But whatever the problem is, just change it, and then maybe someday he'll say, oh, you don't do that anymore. And some killjoys should be confessed, so you will be accountable and get them out of your marriage. And sometimes, let's talk about confrontation. Let's talk about the thing that I don't like. I don't like to bring anything up. But sometime you may honestly need to go to your husband after you've prayed and sought the Lord and tell him, this is killing the joy in my heart. This is not the way I thought a marriage should be. You know, in Genesis 45:4, Joseph said to his brothers that had sold him into Egypt, I'm Joseph, whom ye sold into Egypt. He did go, he did say, right? So, and discussing whatever the problem is should only be after prayer, and you go in the spirit of humbleness and not condemnation. Let's go to Galatians 6:1. We're talking about having to say the uncomfortable or confrontational thing. Galatians 6:1. It's amazing how many things you can say, well, that's not about marriage. Yeah, it is. A lot of things are about marriage. We just kind of categorize them off into, oh, that's for a church problem. The same thing can work for us, right? That's in the Bible. So it says, brethren, in chapter 6 of Galatians, verse 1, it says, brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, right? You which are spiritual, that might be a problem, but restore such an one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. So if they be overtaken in fault, we might have to do that to restore something in your marriage that needs to be restored. And remember, Don't go to him until you've cast the mote out of your own eye. Remember to state the facts and not be a drama queen. He may or may not see your point, and it might take some time. He may or may not apologize right then. It may take time for him to see and for the Lord to reveal something to him. Joseph's brothers, he said, I am Joseph in Genesis 45, and they didn't apologize until Genesis 50. So, I mean, it had to kind of work around in there for a while before he got to that point. And make sure you do forgive him and don't be a grudge holder. And be ready. When you bring something up, be ready to hear something you don't want to hear. Because if you bring something up, it might open the door for him to bring something up. And it might be painful for you. So you're being honest with him about your feelings may prompt him to say something painful, but something probably that needs to get aired out. And so we need to change. So that was confessing that maybe you have been a guilty, and change your thoughts about your husband. Let's go to Philippians 4:8. Philippians 4:8. So you think about, so whenever you think ugly thoughts about your husband, you can use these verses to help you think the right kind of thoughts. Okay? Philippians 4:8 says, whatsoever things are true, honest. Sometimes I skip over the true and just go, and the honest, and I just go to the pure and the lovely and the good report and having virtue and praise. Really, that's where I park. It doesn't have virtue and doesn't have praise. Because the devil is constantly going to bring things up to you. Things that you feel slighted about or any kind of little things. But whenever I see my mind going down the wrong path in my thinking about different things or my husband, I try to stop and change my path and go in the other direction. It's just like that thing, you guys probably didn't see Sky King. It was an old thing, but he was a pilot, and in every week it seems like he was going down. Like every week there was this dramatic thing, and he was going like this, trying to bring the nose of the plane up, and because his nose was going down, and every week it was the same thing. But anyway, that's what I do in my heart when I see my nose going down, whether it's depressing thoughts or hard thoughts. I just, with Christ, bring the nose of my plane up, and I use this verse, Philippians 4:8. Think on these things, right? Count my blessings, like that song says, and I also use 2 Corinthians 10:5. Second Corinthians 10:5. It says, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. It's a, what would you say? It's a thing where you're just going to have to discipline yourself. And sometimes the devil will tell us things about our husband. The devil uses our imagination against our marriages, and all of us have thought something and imagined something against our husbands. So use this verse as well. And be content. Put down Hebrews 13:5 right there with that contentment verse in Hebrews 13:5, to be content with what you do have in your marriage. Because it says godliness with contentment is what?
Great gain.
What?
Great gain.
Great. How much gain?
Great gain.
It's a great gain. Godliness with contentment is great gain. And my young friend said, instead of constantly dwelling on how miserable I was in my marriage, and my husband had no right to treat me the way he did, this went on for years. Instead of thinking this is not how I planned my married life, I stopped thinking about how I was hurt, cheated, used, misunderstood. I quit thinking about how someone else's husband treated their wife better. And I slowly began to switch my thousands of thoughts every day to things brighter, it was quite simple once I made that decision to go in the other direction. So we want to change. We might want to change our thoughts and our attitudes. Remember last night, Ephesians 5:31. You might just want to put that down again, because that's talking about attitude. It says, see that she reverenced her husband. And so reverence is an attitude as well, because if it's in your heart, it will come out. And that reverence is godly fear. So count your blessings and don't be unthankful. Don't be the never joyful, never content person. I already told you about how Mike would face that wheelchair every day. In Proverbs, no, I already told you that one. This is the day the Lord hath made. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. So your marriage can be really dry and just be so dry, it says it breaketh the bones. So give your heart and soul to your marriage and try to change your attitude if you have a bad attitude in it. And you know, there's something about us that wants to be a victim. Now, there are true victims in this life, right? So I'm not talking about a true victim with a true problem. But, there's something in our humanness that just wants to wallow in negativity. And they want to play these cards like who does he think he is card, or I have my rights card, or the victim card, and enjoying other women patting you on the back and stuff like that. And the wallowing temptation. We don't want to do those things. We want to change our habits and remove our part of the problem. My friend said, I practiced smiling. Being pitiful and disapproving was not appealing or attractive. I began to make myself appealing with cheer, joy, and eagerness to serve. My bitter, sad spirit was not attractive to my husband at all. So she was trying to save her marriage. She was trying to make her marriage different. And I really appreciate her desire to do that. So you might have to cry out to the Lord to restore the joy to yourself. And how many times, I bet each one of us here could talk of a time when we got down on our knees and cried out to the Lord for help in some area of our lives. Well, we can do that with our marriages as well. Committing our problem to the Lord and resting in the promise that He has heard it is sometimes hard, because we don't want to, I don't know what it is, we don't want to just turn things over to Him for some reason. But in the same way that Psalm 51 says, restore unto me the joy of my salvation, we can say, restore unto my marriage the joy that I had. And let me read you, this is a friend of mine wrote this, Debbie Pride. Does anybody know who she is? She's this excellent person. She's a counselor for women and out on the West Coast. And she's a Bible believer, believe it or not. I mean, King James verses. But she has a desire and help to help people with marriage. And this is what she said: happily married couples are not perfect. They have merely learned to accept one another's humanity and relinquish unrealistic demands and expectations. Instead of demanding perfection, they have learned to seek God and depend on Him to work things out and meet their needs. It is only as we learn to accept one another without condemnation that we can really begin to either overlook faults that are not significant or change what really needs to be changed. Resentfully resigning ourselves to accepting disappointments in our marriages is different from accepting and understanding our mates. It's harder. It's harder to really get down and do the nitty-gritty of trying to understand and get things worked out. Rather, this kind of resentful resignation indicates that we are harboring an insidious little grudge which will chisel away at our contentment and respect for our husbands. So let's go over. We need to critique ourselves and find out if we've been a killjoy. We need to consider that there may be ways that you're hurting your own marriage that you're responsible for, not him. Confess it to God and to your husband if necessary. Confront if necessary. Change bad habits and bad attitudes, and cry out to the Lord to restore the joy of your marriage. So you need to stop enduring your marriage and start enjoying it. So let's pray there, and then I have something else I want to talk about. Lord, you've got a lot of verses in the Bible that will help us to have a joyful marriage or to get back on track if we don't have one right now. And I pray, Lord, that you would help each lady here to find out if there's something they're doing that is bringing their marriage down, and to encourage them to find that out and to start having that strong, joyful marriage. The joy of the Lord is our strength, and the marriage that is strong and joyful is really glorifying to thee, and that should be our goal, Lord. And I pray this in Jesus' name, amen. Now, we're going to take a break here in a few minutes, but I have some homework for you. Nobody's saying anything. Okay, so I do. So this one is what couples fight about most. Nobody's saying anything. It's like a vacuum. Can you take one and pass it on? You guys can, I don't want to see it, honest. Don't put your name on it. I really don't want to know. So that one is really good. You can read that and answer those questions. Is that one, what did I give you? What's it? Yeah. Okay, do we need any more? It's just that this one was, do we have enough for everybody? So, everybody have one?
Yep.
You can just, did you get one, Casey?
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, okay. She was keeping two for herself because she has so much.
Well, that
to-
was different. This one
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that was my master copy. Okay. Okay, so this is a good thing to consider. Let me get my. I don't have one. Let me look about what I just gave you. I just think this is really good. Let me find it. What page was that? Right. So this is just for you to take home and read down, and it will kind of go along with the things that we talked about today. And I have two more, actually. So, and it's just things for you to consider. So here's some more. And this is about problems and disagreements and esteeming other better than yourself. You can just, fold it up and keep it in your notebook, and it'll be a blessing to you. I don't know about you, but I just love to read about things that could help me in a difficult situation. So this is a third one, and you probably won't do it because you're supposed to take all of these things right here and ask your husband. You're supposed to put down what's the most important 5 to you, and then ask your husband what are the most important 5. And sometimes we don't like what they say.
I want to know.
But you know what? It might open up something that you don't understand, that they would rather have a meal on the table than something else, right? I mean, we don't know. The meal on the table might be really important. Yes, ma'am.
Is this all from like one book?
Yes, it's from How to Be Happily Married by Debbie Pride.
Okay, I wrote her name down. How is
She's
that
good. She's just so matter of fact. I love her. She does great. Lady, here it is actually. It's kind of beat up and well thumbed through. I skip the chapters I don't like. No, I'm teasing. But so on this last one, learning to love, it kind of goes along with what we were talking about. As you think about meeting your husband's desires and needs, remember 1 John 3:18 and Matthew 7:12. My little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. Therefore, all things whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do ye even to them, for this is the law and the prophets. Learn how to say I love you by doing what you can to please and help your husband. But the problem is, what if you're doing these 4 things and the one thing that he wanted is the 5th thing? So, like I was saying about the shirts, that was a good one. It's kind of, anyway, so those are some things for you to think about. And ask your husband if he would fill out the other side. You might want to keep yours, like cut it, cut your part out, and then after he puts his down, because he might think he has to put the same things down just to make you happy. So kind of cut it or something, and then have a nice discussion about that, and then really take that to heart. And we're going to take a break right now. You can get coffee or grab something, and then we're going to be back here in about 10 minutes. I think there's some coffee downstairs. We need a pot up here for us. Wait. I have to tell you one more thing. I have a book for you that's so important. This is really silly. But this book this is the title of this book. Hold on. This is Brother Spurgeon and I were talking about. What women understand about men. It's all blank.
Write it down.
It's a blank plate. We don't understand. Would you go take that to Papa? He has one about women. Okay, I'll just tell you. He wrote one for the women. What men understand about women. Nothing. Just enjoy that they know nothing. That's all. Go to the bathroom and get something, and when we have one more, and then we'll have lunch.